I don't see that as a catalyst as much as it was really the tipping point. The fundamentals are really the fact that demand for easy answer, it's the rebalancing of the supply and demand fundamentals for uranium. But we really got an assist about 8-9 weeks ago with the entrance of the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust and their ATM financing, which has allowed them to enter the market and buy up to $1.3 billion worth of uranium off the open market. Again, I don't see that as a catalyst as much as it was really the tipping point. The fundamentals are really the fact that demand for uranium and nuclear generation has responded back to pre-Fukushima levels. We've seen 57 new reactors come online around the world. We're now building small modular reactors in various markets, but also the production consolidation that occurred in really 2017 and has really been at a gap of about 40 to 60 million pounds per year globally, production to consumption gap over the last 5 years. So it was really inevitable that we would start to see the uranium price move, but it was the Sprott activity that's really provided price discovery and the liquidity that was been badly needed in the uranium market.
And the bigger picture is the push towards so-called cleaner energy, decarbonization, and the fact that nuclear energy is being seen as a primary source of that, and for the first time in a very long time enjoying bipartisan support, at least here in the US. So talk us through that dynamic.
Well, it's really a mega trend that I haven't seen in my 37 years in this industry, in that society is really facing a conundrum. Is that policymakers and society in general wants to move to cleaner, carbon-free energy, but the math and science hasn't exactly added up on how we get there. And so we've seen $10,000 electric bills in Texas. We've seen blackouts in California. We've seen energy crisis now in Europe and Germany's reliance on natural gas from Russia. So I think it's really beginning to be a broader realization amongst policymakers, environmentalists, investment community, that nuclear energy is an important part of a carbon-free future. And it's just seeing that broader acceptance is really now translating in favorable public opinion towards nuclear. Let's face it, nuclear energy is as clean and carbon-free as wind and solar. It's as safe as wind and solar, but where it really differs is it runs 95% of the time, as opposed to intermittent renewables that run 30% of the time. So we're really filling an important niche at a time where energy policymakers really need that baseload carbon-free energy.
Has the safety issue, though, fully been addressed? Because, of course, you think of nuclear energy, and then the ghosts of Chernobyl and Fukushima and 3 Mile Island come up. Now, to your point, the narrative has changed when you've got the likes of Bill Gates as a strong proponent for nuclear energy. But has the safety issue at its core really been fully addressed, and if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, if you measure all energy sources over the last 50, 60 years, and you measure it by fatalities or deaths from individual energy sources, nuclear energy is about as safe as solar and is safer than wind power. And obviously, the impacts of fossil fuels have been much higher. So I think it's really more, I think the industry's done a bad job at communicating this and educating and kind of demystifying nuclear energy in order to get that broader acceptance. But we are seeing now public acceptance rates at about 76%, so some of that message is getting through. But you did mention Bill Gates, and it really helps to have tech leaders like Peter Thiel, Bill Gates, Elon Musk speaking out on favor of nuclear power, and Bill Gates putting his money where his mouth is with the TerraPower Advanced Small Modular Reactor. They've done the math and science. They realize society is becoming more electrified, not less. Transportation needs are going to probably increase our electricity demands by 50% in the developed world. So they realize that if we're going to produce more electricity and do it cleanly, nuclear energy is a good source. Bill Gates has got an advanced reactor called the Natrium reactor that I was very fortunate to join the governor of Wyoming at the State House in Cheyenne a few weeks ago, where it was announced that TerraPower will be building an advanced small modular reactor in Wyoming on the site of a retiring coal-fired power plant. I mean, if that isn't a wonderful story, if that can happen in coal country, we see the growth in these SMR reactors as enormous, not just in the United States, but around the world.
How much of US energy is currently being supplied through nuclear sources?
Yeah, that's another surprise to folks. The 93 reactors in the United States supply about 20% of our electricity, but it's a full 55% of our carbon-free electricity. So it's twice the contribution of carbon-free energy that wind and solar provide at 10% of our electricity needs.
And according to the Department of Energy, about 90% of the uranium fuel used today in US reactors is in fact produced by other countries.
It's incredible.
So how does one deal with that potential supply challenge?
I think back, when we were getting about half of our oil and gas supplies from abroad, we found that as an unacceptable national security and energy risk. We're now, you're absolutely right, 90%, approaching 100% of our supplies coming from foreign sources. But what's more alarming is 50% of those supplies are coming from Russia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan, countries that aren't necessarily aligned with our interests at home and abroad. So there has been a real push to revitalize the domestic uranium industry, and Uranium Energy Corp, being based out of Texas with operations in Texas and Wyoming, really have been at the forefront of that. I'm the president of the Uranium Producers of America, and we're lobbying quite aggressively and getting sympathetic response from both Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate. I think it helps too that we've really our eyes have been open to supply chain vulnerabilities and vulnerability in critical minerals. And so uranium clearly fits that category. And so we have an industry that, there's 1 billion pounds of known and likely reserves in the Western United States. We led production in 1980, but we really kind of fell off as countries like Kazakhstan, Canada, Australia increased production. Today's uranium industry in the United States is dominated by in situ recovery, which is very environmentally friendly, very low capital cost, and low operating cost. So we fully are able to compete on an even playing field with the bigger producers around the world. Many of them are state-owned, which has been a problem, which is why we've had policymakers kind of chime in and, for example, limit imports from Russia, for example. But on a level playing field, U.S. uranium can compete in this global market, and we're very excited to ramp up operations.